talking about mystical experiences. Years ago when I was, not that many years ago by the way, when I was closer to your age, some 8 years ago or so, we had to drive from New York to Detroit and back. And we had to get there fast and get back fast. And Hasidim are usually very, very fast people. We have no problems. We get to you run here, you run there, you move it. So on the way back, I was driving very fast. It was a rented car and a brand new one. At that, it was a Fury 3, if I remember correctly. And we were breaking every record in the books. And while I was driving, I was looking up many times when you're trying to get fast from one city to the next, you pick up some sort of a kid that drags with you for a little while, so you go faster, and then you have a little game that keeps you awake. I don't do these things anymore, or perhaps, unless I really regard it as important, which is not more than once or twice a day. That's why I'm so well known on the campus. I don't mean amongst the students either. I look in the mirror and I see this guy is coming up fast. So I say to the guys, it's probably some sort of a kid, let's show him. So you floor the car and you go faster, and you go faster. And he catches up a little bit and you go faster. And finally we went on like this for some 60 or 70 miles. We're doing 100 miles, 110. It was unbelievable. Finally, I say to the guys, let's see what kind of a meshugana this is. Let's see what kind of a guy this is that's chasing us so long. And it was a tan car. This was in Ohio. So we slowed up enough to have him catch up, and the guy pulls up alongside of us, and I noticed that his window is rolled down, and his right hand is holding a revolver. And he's motioning with a gun, like pull over to the side. Well, we had nothing better to do to stop a slug. To stop a slug wasn't exactly that healthy, and to speed up again, he was too close. So he pulled over to the side, and out walks this guy, and it was getting late. It was in the late afternoon. It was time to daven mincha, the afternoon service. And here you have this big guy. The state trooper must have been 6'5" and 4 feet wide, with a big hat and the whole spiel. And he walks out, and his hand is on his gun. He's holding it like this. He says, "Get out of the car." I says, "Take it easy." I said, "We're rabbis on an emergency mission." Every mission of a rabbi is an emergency mission. Like the fire engines, you never know when you have to get back to home base. So whatever the case is, it's an emergency mission. He doesn't understand nothing, and he probably never saw from the hills where he was born. He never saw the beards, and the black coats definitely sent him on a trip. And I said, "Rabbis," he said, "I don't know from nothing." He said, "You're crazy." And his car was smoking. "I've been chasing you for so many miles." He says, "Keep your hands in the air." And one by one, he had us give him the papers that on the car and that we had, and the licenses, and every one of us the identifications. Finally, he says, "It's a $120 fine. You can pay it here, or you can go back to the city to pay it, or go back to the city and go to jail if you haven't got the money." I said, "Officer, we haven't got the money. You can't do this to us." He says, "You want to bet?" I said, "But you can't. We must get back to New York. It can't be this way." He didn't listen. So finally, I say to the guys in Yiddish, which is the universal language that your parents speak if you don't know it, or you have to speak perhaps in certain terms where others shouldn't exactly understand what you're saying. So I said, "Chaver, lumma davenin mincha." I said, "Let's daven mincha. What else is there to do? The guy is standing holding a gun on you. He wants $120 you haven't got. He wants to put you in jail. You have to get back to New York. What is a better thing to do from a mystical point of view? You daven mincha, afternoon services." So I look at my watch, I say, "Officer, you'll have to excuse us. We have to say our afternoon prayers. It's late." What should he do? I think he's not going to try to shoot 5 or 6 of us at once, a mass slaughter in the middle of the road. So I said, "Excuse us 1 second. And we all line up at the side of the road. You can imagine what this looked like. 6 guys with beards and black hats and black coats standing at the side of the road. The sun is setting, and you're standing amongst the trees, and they all start to shuckle. They all start to shake. It's a mystical experience. They start to shake in unison. No, we finished Shimon Esrei, and afterwards we got together and said, "Hey, what are we gonna do?" So I say, just like the story that they tell of the Alter Rebbe, the first Lubavitcher Rebbe, when he was in jail and they wanted to photograph him, he was davening. He went like this to the guy, and the guy left. I said, "We'll do the same thing. We'll try it. What do you got to lose? Nothing." So I walked over to him, and I give a look. I can't see him. I don't see where he is. Finally, I see he's sitting in his car, and he has all of his windows and buttons down, and he has one window open to his left, around 2 inches. In his right hand is his gun. In the left hand is the papers that he took from us. He shoves the papers out the window before I could say boo, stepped on the gas and ran away. He thought it was some sort of a plot or something, I can imagine. And I don't know if I would have felt any differently in a similar situation. And he ran away. That could be a mystical experience, you see. But mysticism itself is something that is very much a part of Judaism and very much a part of the Torah, very much part of our tradition. As we know, there are 4 parts to the Torah: Pshat, Remez, Drush, and Sod. The various classifications of the Torah, of which the Sod, the hidden portion of Torah, is what is commonly known today as Kabbalah, or perhaps Hasidic philosophy that is based on the Kabbalah. As I say before, anybody who wants to get popular today and he's got a little bit of boober and he's perhaps has a picture hanging on the wall of his grandfather with a beard and phylacteries, which to him seems mystical because he knows nothing about it, it starts to talk about mysticism. What actually is mysticism? The Sod Torah, the hidden portion of the Torah itself, is the innards of our tradition. And what does it deal with? The creation of the world. Creation of the world. Yesh ayin vo yesh. Something, nothing, something. Which in all patterns of society follows through. Both in man's own personal life, you find the something, nothing, something. As you go from stage to stage in elevation, from one stage to the next. You have that in the creation of the world. Likewise, you have the idea of mochin and midot, mind and emotion. What makes somebody tick? Why does somebody do something? The head shrinkers today make a mint. They come in and lie on the couch, and you pay $15, $20, $35, depending on how much you can afford, because if he doesn't charge you enough, you're not satisfied. You have to find somebody that does better. Who in our society, that's any place, doesn't have his personal shrink? You have to have somebody you can come and tell your tzoros to, your problems to. And then you solve his problems also. So not only does he solve yours, but he solves yours are not as questionable, but his problems are solved most of the time. Regardless of the situation, you find, if you look within man's inner workings, you find the idea of mind and emotion that rule man. Very simple idea Kabbalah talks about. That the mystical philosophy of the Jewish people discusses. What prompts a person to do something? What brings about happiness to a person? What's man's mission in life? These are the various ideas dealt with in Jewish mysticism. Now you have meditation, okay? Meditation. What's today meditation? You sit on the floor with your feet crossed. If I would try to meditate like that for half an hour, I'd be a cripple for life. But they sit on the floor with the knees crossed, and that's meditating. You're meditating a certain... I remember I bought Chabad house, and unfortunately, right before we bought it, it was a house that served many needs. And the walls had seen so much sin, that's why we covered it with paneling and with acoustics. It's the only way to cover it, at least for a while. And the smell of drugs from the walls that had been absorbed, the marijuana smell before. So I wanted to see the house. We had bought it, and I didn't want to give anybody a hassle. So I came to see the house. You don't walk in and say, hey, buddy, this is my place, get out. You like to be nice about it. So you say, listen, kids, we got to fix the place up a little bit. More kids are going to be here. Please leave in a couple of weeks. This guy, it was one room was always locked. And you could never get in to see it. Finally, one day, I give a look, the lock is off. I knock on the door, I say, open up. Who is this? I said, this is, I try to be nice. Well, and I try to, the Efkin, Befke, that's a certain Jewish expression that's hard to translate. You say nothing and say something at the same time. Like, please, and so finally I said, yes, sir, I own the building. Could you please open the door? He says, don't bother me now, I'm meditating. I said, if you would have been meditating, you wouldn't have heard me knock on the door. If you would have been truly meditating. What's the idea of meditation, for example, in Hasidus? In the Jewish mysticism. The idea of meditation, or his bonanut, many times you find a Chassid will take his talus and put it over his head. I wear a 6-foot talus, if you've seen it. It's a maxi talis. You know, the real thing. It's not a shmegegi that's 12 inches wide or something like that. It's good to keep your neck warm or to absorb the sweat on a hot day. I mean, that's some of the things that the temples have put together to save money. It's cheaper. Imagine you take 1 6-foot one and cut it into 6 pieces. Imagine what you do to the budget. And they have to raise less money so they can afford to build another building outside with a bigger plaque or whatever it is. So finally, you take this talis and you put it. A chassid puts it over his head. That's why it's so long. It covers your head. And you pull it down, and you're alone. You're alone with yourself and with God, alone. And then you start to think. You start hisponenut, to think. What does a Jew think about? Well, various topics. You think about many things. Hopefully, it's the right things in the right time. But the idea of stopping to wonder, who are you? What are you headed for? What is your mission in life? Is there a creator? Have we been created? If we have been created, for what reason? You know the story they tell of the non-believer that came to the great rabbi and said, how do I know that the world had a creator? It just happened. You know how it goes, gases in space, molecules, evolutions, monkeys and men. There's a whole spiel. They have it all worked out. How it happened. To say my great-grandfather was a monkey, I'm not ready to accept. Perhaps other people, fine, do your thing. But they have it all worked out. So he said to him, how did the world become? It became by itself. He said, well, I'll answer your question first. Read this page for me. This page? Read for me for what? Well, read it. He starts to read it. He said, who wrote this? He said, how should I know who wrote it? So he says to him, are you sure that somebody wrote it? He says, of course I'm sure somebody wrote it. He says, you're mistaken. There was this big bottle of ink I had on my desk. And there was an earthquake. It was in California, and the bottle spilled. And all of a sudden it mished, and it mashed, and it mashed, and it mished. And all of a sudden this is what it came up with. He says, come on, Orphan, you're kidding me. It can't be such a thing. Somebody wrote this, of course, that's what the mind tells us. So he says, if so, that's the same case with the world. If this singular page, you must decide that the ink could not fall in such a pattern, that it necessitated someone to write it, then definitely the world. You know, I think it was one of the great scientists that said that if you were to take 100,000 monkeys, or 1 million monkeys, and set them to typing. I'm sure you can teach a monkey how to type. Set them to type. Set them typing 1 million monkeys. And he said next amount of years, inadvertently they will have typed all the works of Shakespeare. In the next amount of years. They worked it out somehow with computers. That's what the answer was. It would take X amount of years by accident or by chance. It would work out, they would type the works of Shakespeare. And the guy that figured it out had a big sign in his office. Keep the damn monkeys away from the typewriters. The world itself wasn't created by monkeys. The world itself wasn't just a happening. But rather there was a creator. And if a creator created you or me or both of us, and the rest of the world and its surroundings, therefore there had to be a purpose for creation. Think, what would be the purpose for creation? And where do you fit within the framework of this great map that has been set up by the Creator? And the chassid starts to think. And he starts to think, and then he comes up with various things. First of all, he may come up with that he's completely out of line, he's completely out of whack. If his mission in life is to help other human beings, and through the 613 commandments, 613, not 614, not 611, 613 commandments. Through the 613 commandments that are constitute the roadmap of life, he will lead a certain type of life to be able to give to the world a message of how to live. And he starts to think, if that's the case, where am I? Who am I? So all of a sudden he may have a feeling of sadness. How far away am I? How far away am I? From the opposite side, he may feel a feeling of great strength. I have a mission, I have a purpose, I'm headed someplace. And then he'll start to dance afterwards and pick a song called Napoleon's March that was written by Napoleon, that he sang whenever he was victorious in battle, because we have won. And perhaps another time he may be caught by a feeling of deep longing. My soul longs for thee. The great feeling of the soul that tries to cleave towards God. And another time, perhaps the great happiness of Ashreinu ma tov chalkeinu, how great is our portion, how wonderful is our lot. And he'll start to dance. Great. You know, many times people call up Chabad House, Rabbi, I'd like to catch some dancing, some action. And when shall I come and film? So I say, well, you know, I don't know what to tell you. The Purim, perhaps you'll see some dancing. Most of you probably were there. You'll see some dancing Purim, amongst other things. You'll see some dancing on Purim. Then the guy comes in with the cameras. He's all ready. He says, okay, start dancing in this corner. Then, we're not computerized. There's no little key in the back that you wind up. We get him to start dancing. You feel like dancing. You dance, of all places. Like we did, some of you may have been with us. We walked on Passover. From Chabad House, we walked to Beverly Hills. I spoke in Rabbi Dolgan's synagogue. It's a good jogging rate to get there, lose a couple of pounds, and myself among some of the other rabbis are getting a little bit on the heavy side with age. So you walk down to Beverly Hills. So Rabbi Schwartz and Rabbi Stillman are a little bit heavier than I am, and it takes a little longer. So every couple of blocks, or every 15, 20 blocks, we wait a half a block, and then I started to talk with a couple of the other guys. And before we noticed it, we had passed the couple of blocks, and they were all the way in the distance behind us. So I say, hey, you know, let's stop here on the corner of Beverly Drive and Wilshire, and wait for them. Wait for them in the corner of Beverly Drive and Wilshire. Well, that's a good idea. But what do you do standing on a street corner, Beverly Drive, corner Wilshire? What can you do? It's Passover. The Jews have left the land of Egypt. They have left the slavery. Every Jew is freed. So what do you do? It's Passover. What are you going to do? Start looking in the boutiques? First of all, there's a bank on the corner, not a boutique. And second of all, the boutiques don't interest us. And what are you supposed to do? So one of the kids starts to sing Yam Bam Bam, starts singing a song. Another one of the kids picked up the tune, a third and a fourth. They started to dance on the corner of Wilshire, corner Beverly Drive, 5:30 or 5:45 in the evening. You should have seen what happened. First of all the fancy Mercedes-Benz would stop. Who would drive a Mercedes-Benz on Yom Tov when he shouldn't be driving, and drive yet a Mercedes-Benz? A Yidel, who else? See, one guy would come out with awe and say, hey, this is great. Young people dancing, enjoying themselves. Holiday. What's it all about? And you explain to him, we're happy, left the land of Egypt. Then you have a little guy coming out and say, what you want? I also know it's Passover. I have Monashevitz's fish at home. I bought matzahs as good as you do. I'm a better Jew than you. I give more to the Federation Council. Better Jew than you. What you are shaming the Jewish people on the street corner? What's the matter with you? Where do you think this is Europe? So, turn around to him, mister. We're just doing our thing. That's even worse. Was see this our thing? Was see this our thing? Finally, they caught up, thank God. If not, there would have been a traffic jam all the way down to Beverly Hills where we were going, to the end of it, as such. So you see, the mystical experience of a Chassid, the depth of emotional feeling and the depth of intellectual involvement that Judaism can bring out can stretch all over the world. And is the very concept of mind over emotion that Chassidus stresses. You want to do something. Why? Why do you want to do it? You want to get your name on a building? That's why you're giving money. You know, it's one thing, Chabad has no names. And there's a lot of bread in that building, believe me. And there's not one name on one door, if you noticed. Nothing, except the names carved in on the sidewalk. But they were not donors. These were kids in the middle of the night. And you stop and think, what? Why do you give? Why are you giving? What's your interest? Why are you doing this? You love a person. Why? You want to help someone. Why? You find many times the Hasidim will get into positions where they'll do something for somebody and later get a good swift kick in the pants and go back and do it again. Help the guy again. Why? The average do-gooder says, hey, I try to help him. He was no good for this, and this reasons. And to say why somebody else is no good is very easy. Everybody can find an answer. It's not hard. And this, and this, and this, and this, and I won't help him again. He doesn't deserve to be helped. He wants to help him, let him help himself. Because his doing was not done with a purity. If a person helps another human being because this he feels is his mission in life, he doesn't care what the other guy has to say. Or like the very fancy integrated-minded people. Integration! Integration, integrate him. They have a big megaphone up in Bel Air, and they blast down into the inner city, integrate. Move into the area if you want to. What are you sitting up in Bel Air screaming integrate? As soon as it gets hot on his doorstep, he's out. Why? These people don't deserve it and they're being appreciative and so on and so forth. Chassidus says, why? You have a feeling to do something. Why? And there comes a pure understanding. And this is the only reason today that you have any organized Judaism left in the Soviet Union. It's because of Hasidim. Why? Chassid was told, hey, you can't have a school. You want to have a school here? Not here, it's not the place. Okay, so he says, we'll call it something else. Go underground with it. Everybody else, most people, most religious people, this is not our deal. The Torah never said that you got to lose your life just to educate a kid. Okay, a couple of things, yes, but to educate a kid, or not to have to do something wrong on Shabbos. And yet these were people that stayed many, many years in concentration camps, 10, 15 years, for teaching kids. They'd come into a concentration camp or to one of the prison camps in the Soviet Union. And believe me, I know these people personally. Numerous of them, thank God, have come out. One guy called Rabbi Futterfass, one of the greatest guys. He was one of the, let's not say too much about him, but one of the greatest guys, had 15 years. 15 years in prison camps. Came out. I went to school with his kids. His wife and children left. He sent them out of Russia before, because he was tied up yet with the movement. Sent them out before. He was arrested as we were about to leave. Years ago. Came out. His kids are already married from the time that he saw them last. 3/4 of his life had been destroyed in the camp. Can't eat this food, can't eat that food, this and that. Guy gets off the plane, the first thing he does is give them the salute, the Hasidic salute, telling them where they can go. There's a special type of salute that the Hasidim have to tell a person where to go certain times. He got off the plane, the Russians were there, he broke into a dance while the Russian guards were standing next to him when he landed in England. And he started to dance in a circle, and with Russian words telling him that the fire has not burnt us and water hasn't drowned us. And we started to talk to the man. You find out he didn't eat the non-kosher food once in the camps. He never worked on a Shabbos. And he came out, when he got out of the camps, it was another some 7 or 8 years before he was freed. What was he doing? He was organizing again. He was organizing again, getting more schools going before he left. What was the impetus behind this person? The impetus was because you can't take away from a chassid. For one that engages in mysticism, you can't take anything away from him. You take away the talis and tefillin, so he sits in the morning and thinks. Take away his books, he knows it by heart. The deep motivation that is brought about through his bonanut, that is brought about through deep understanding and through deep involvement with prayer, this is what drives a chassid. They tell the story of the Baal Shem Tov, who, through great involvement with plain people, every person has a neshama, every person has a soul. One of the main basic teachings of Hasidism. Every single person has a soul, it can never be lost. So a Jew tries to alienate himself, a Jew tries to give himself a title, he tries to cop into this place and cop out to that place, he cuts his hair in various ways, no difference. The neshama, the Jewish soul, is there and is vital and is alive. So the Baal Shem Tov, they tell the story in the Baal Shem Tov synagogue where there was a cantonist There was a young man who had been taken away from his parents as a child, and been spirited away and taken and forced, conscripted into the army. And they tried to break every bit of Judaism out of him. And he came to return. He came to return to his hometown. His parents had died. He went to the house. No one was there. He didn't know it was Yom Kippur. And where could he go? He walked to where the synagogue was. And he walked in, he saw that a synagogue full of people wearing white clothes. He understood it was Yom Kippur. No one recognized him, many, many years older than he was before. And as he came into the synagogue, he wanted to pray to God, to thank him for liberating him. He wanted to pray to God, to ask him for his needs. He wanted to communicate. And he opened up the book and then realized it was so many years, he didn't remember how to read. And then he started to cry and finally realized the idea. He took that book, turned it around the other way, and said, "Here, God, you read from the book. Because you know so much better what you want to hear. You know so much better what I need. You read from the book." That is an experience. That is a deep, moving experience that one can go through. And that is something perhaps that reaches out to God more deeply than an experience of sitting in a $3 million temple. $3 million temple, $4 million temple perhaps. And I had this and this architect design it. And the way he designed it, you can't tell if it's a church or a synagogue. And on top of that, to have Jewish girls sing to God. God forbid, why should a Jewish girl sing to God in the choir? So to get someone that's not Jewish. Maybe God likes them better, let them sing. Because Jewish girls don't have nice voices. And then they got somebody blaring away at the organ. And if they're more modern, I came into a temple not long, let me introduce you to our cantor. And he'll talk to you, he'll be in the next room. I walk into the next room, I see a kid sitting there. Looks like from the hip generation of years ago, sitting and playing his guitar in the corner. So I sit down. He doesn't talk to me. I don't talk to him. I think he's engrossed with his songs. I forgot what he was playing, something probably from the more popular tunes. And interesting enough, he's singing Hebrew words to himself. Hebrew words, one of the songs is, takes all kinds to make a world. Singing Shema Yisrael or something with one of the songs of the radio from the latest hits. So I sit. Finally, the rabbi comes back and says, "No, how did you do with our cantor?" I said, "He wasn't here." He said, "What do you mean he wasn't here? He's sitting there in the corner." I said, "That was your cantor?" He said, "Of course. We have a service, we call it Hasidic. I'm sure you'll enjoy it." And they get up and they start beating the banjos and beating the drums and they create and desecrate. Whatever you like, bang, hit it up. Get moving with it. I said, "Look, a pop service maybe, but a Hasidic service." I said, "How does this fit?" One must realize that the whole idea of prayer is so much deeper. You can pray any place. Any place a person is, a person can pray. A person can pour out his soul to God any place he is. And this is one of the basic ideas of mysticism and of Hasidism, that prayer can change and mold man's life. Prayer can change and mold man's life. You have plenty of trouble. This one's hassling you, that one's hassling you, and you start davening. You say, "Hashem Halisim Sheol Nafshi," God has taken my soul from Sheol, from under the earth. Another place, you're happy. Hoidul Hashem, Kira Vishmo, thank God, call on His name. There's so much expression. There's a great beauty that there is in the idea of prayer. Likewise, from the opposite side, the idea of prayer many times can become such a hassle. Not necessarily when you have a temple situation, as I spoke about before, with little plates on everything, from the roof to the floor, donated by this one in the honor of this one, or whatever the case may be. But just the very basic idea of a good place to pray. But there they start calling you and telling you what to do when. That's not the idea of prayer that mysticism brings out. Prayer is communication, you and God. And then it ties in Jacques Lifshitz, who did the peace and the peace statue downtown in front of the music center. He was here. A guy puts on tefillin every day. So I talked to him, I said, Jacques, what got you involved? What got you tied up in knots? So he says, when I put on my tefillin, he says, I feel the binding of myself. When you put on tefillin, you're doing the same thing that they did in Sinai. That they did many, many years ago. They're doing the same thing that people are doing today throughout the whole world. The link of history that is expressed. The link. And likewise, when man has control, when man spends time in his bonanut, man spends time in depth of understanding and soul searching, then man has control over oneself. They have to have control over oneself. This gives a person complete control. Complete control to the point of not falling under the influence of despair. Many times you start despairing. You know, it's late, you haven't studied a whole quarter. You're right before the tests. You have to go and take a test. You don't even know what book he's talking about. And you fall into despair. The worst thing you could do is despair. Like this, at least, you stand the chance of ad-libbing. And maybe if you have a young teacher or perhaps someone that's quite creative, he'll give you an A for a creative course. It was so creative that he never saw it, and the one that invented the course never heard of it. But it's creative at least. Creative expression. But if you're in a feeling of despair, you can't do that. And this is what his bonanut does for man. Likewise, in closing, then I'll take questions on this subject or any other subject you'd like to talk about. The very idea of man having in his life a pattern of life to lead. Man having a pattern of life to lead. See, Jewish communities will come and go. Federations will come and go. Community centers will come and go. Temples will come and go. Organizations will come and go. The Jew is what remains from the Jewish community, in essence. From the Jews themselves, you again have those that are coming and those that are going. Those that are within the Jewish faith and those Jews that have accepted to live without the Jewish faith. The various ins and outs that there are within the Jewish people themselves. But regardless of whether a Jew is in or regardless of whether a Jew is out, he's a Jew. And that's one thing that can never be lost throughout all the organizations and all these surveys and everything else that runs with it. What can never be lost and what's eternal is the Jew. And therefore the Jew understanding and living and feeling himself as something that is a trunk of a tree that will continue from generation to generation, therefore finds a sense of destiny. Throw it open for questions. No questions, yeah? How does Buberism fit into Hasidism? That's a very good question, and it was put so great that I'll have to use the phrase for the future. How does Buberism fit into Hasidism? First of all, it doesn't. That's the first thing. Second of all, I'm glad. The reason I say it's such a good phrase, at least, usually I hear people lecture about Hasidic Buberian Zen. You ever hear such a maisa? Anaya Makez, we say it. Another plague. Hasidic Buberian Zen. Zen is one thing, and Buber is another thing, and Hasidism is another thing. Hasidic Buberian Zen. Tanaya Nayas, a new type of news. So therefore, when you say Buber and Hasidism, Buber, unfortunately, was not a Chassid. Whether fortunately or unfortunately, I believe his mate wasn't even Jewish, as such. For a person to write about something and become as deeply involved as Buber had supposedly had become involved with Hasidism and not become a Chassid is impossible. Is therefore the involvement of Buber is very nice. He brought a certain awakening into the theory of Hasidism, so on and so forth. Buber wasn't a Chassid, did not practice Hasidism in his life, and at the same time only deals with certain aspects of Hasidism with his slant. Is therefore when you say Buberism and Hasidism, keep them separate. Buber, I'm sure, had a lot to offer. He was a brilliant person, but a Chassid he wasn't. You see, a Chassid he wasn't. His influence brought Hasidism into the light, so it became popular today. Everybody that you give a look is talking about Hasidism. I came here the first time before we had Chabad House years ago. There was a guy that somebody had sponsored to come here. I don't remember, but he was talking about Hasidism and Zen. So first of all, I was confident about Hasidism. He knew very little, but I thought he knew something about Zen. Unfortunately, not only he didn't know about Hasidism, apparently he didn't know much about Zen either. It's very difficult to talk about Hasidism and to get involved with Hasidism until one's really studied it and learned it. And there are thousands of volumes of philosophy. Yes, sir. Okay, two very good questions. One related with the other, and I'll sing. Oh, that's the first answer. I'm also a cantor. I'll answer the second one first, and then from that perhaps it'll be easy to understand the first. As far as why one can't use a guitar, a cantor can definitely use a guitar. To use a guitar on Shabbos, or to use a guitar on a holiday is not permitted, because to use an instrument that's mashmiya kol, to use an instrument that gives out any type of a note on the Sabbath or on the holidays, you're not allowed to do it. Why you're not allowed to do it? First of all, that's the law. Second of all, if you'd like to get involved at some other time, deeply involved, to explain you more about the law, I'd be more than happy to. So that's I say Tillim every single day, and anybody who wants to say Tillim with a guitar, I'm sure King David wouldn't mind, as far as that's concerned. But as far as using your guitar in a synagogue on Shabbos, it's against the law, first of all. And second of all, which going back to your first question, what do I have against a cantor that has long hair? Nothing. Perhaps a little jealousy. But nothing really against long hair as far as the cantor is concerned. But in general, one thing I'm very strongly against, and this is something that I have found and I find from time to time. This religious leader or cantor or rabbi, regardless, whatever it is, decides he's going to get to the young people. How is he going to get to the young people? If they can dance the cha-cha, that's way out many, many years back, or they can dance this and this dance, he'll dance it better than them. If they can do this and this and this and engage in this type of activity and that type of activity, he'll do it better than them. If they think they're liberal, he'll explain how liberal he is. He's going to outdo them at their game. This is something that I feel, number one, is non-productive at least, and destructive in many, many cases. For one reason, I don't think any one of us here need a rabbi or a cantor to teach us how to play a guitar. I don't think that when we look at a rabbi, regardless of what his persuasion may be, that we're looking for somebody to tell us how we live. We know how we live. The kids, they know how they live. We don't need a rabbi to give a hechsher. I'll never forget, it must have been around 3-4 years ago, this rabbi got real mad, and he comes out on the radio with a kosher stamp for premarital sex. There were 2 rabbis, in fact, that did it. So I said, first of all, I never had an experience yet when somebody wants to engage in premarital sex, they rush over to ask a rabbi, is it kosher or not? I never saw such a scene. Never happened yet. Never happened yet. So a rabbi supposedly trying to get to the youth, the way to get to them is by quote, overplaying their own game. I think this is wrong. That's what I would say I would have against that type of a situation that I encountered there. Do you understand what I mean? Very good. This is freedom of belief as such. But I have to tell you very honestly, I have seen very little results as such. Yeah? The word Chabad that's pronounced Chabad and Habad and Sabad, he pronounced it correctly. But most people call up with the various pronunciations. The word Chabad is a transliteration of a Hebrew, of an anachronism of 3 Hebrew words. Chochmah, wisdom, Bina, understanding, Da'at, knowledge. The first 3 letters, Chet, Bet, Daled, is Chabad. In the Hasidic movement itself, you had 2 various, as you usually find, if you have 2 Jews in one room, you have 3 opinions. And likewise, even amongst the Hasidic movement, not only do you have Hasidim and those that are not Hasidim, but you have Hasidim, and then you have 2 types of Hasidim. The kind that are, quote, Chabadniks, those that follow the pattern of study of philosophy and meditation and so on and so forth, and with a mystical involvement. You have the other type of Hasidim that you have more la la la, and singing and dancing and joy, which we have also, by the way, but there the main emphasis is put on that, and not necessarily the great emphasis on the philosophical aspect of Hasidism. Any further questions? Yeah? If I foresee any change in the relationship of God to us, or the openness of God in this world before the end of the century, every morning, every religious Jew says, "Ani ma'amin be'emunah shlema," I believe with total belief, b'bias HaMashiach, with the coming of Messiah. I personally believe that Mashiach can come this afternoon, perhaps before I'm finished, as far as that goes. Well, when is there a better time for him to come? First of all, he'll get so many of us in one room. He'll save the job of rounding him up all over the campus. Number one. From the opposite side, what the definition of Mashiach, the definition of Messiah, and the definition of what will happen when the Messiah comes, one must be extremely careful to understand this clearly and to study about this in Jewish books. In the Jewish legal books, and also the Kabbalistic books and the various other books that get into the concept of Messiah. For one of the, as it states, a man from the house of David will arise, one who studies the Torah and lives the life of Torah, which means 613 commandments as such, just the way his father David did. He'll gather together all the Jews and will return Jews back to Judaism, not bring peace. We have time for that yet. Peace won't come so fast. First he has to bring all the Jews back to Judaism, and so on and so forth, and then gather together all the Jews from all over the world, and all the various things which Maimonides brings out about the coming of Messiah. And then we have finally L'Sakin Olam Malchus Shin Dalad Yud, that where the world itself will become, there will be a greater manifestation of openness, of godliness here on this world. Any further questions? Yeah? How do I support myself? Well, thank God I get paid from New York, from our main office, the main headquarters of Lubavitch. How Chabad House supports us? That's a very, very good question. If I knew the answer, I would be in better shape. I never know from day to day. The Federation, as of yet, has not bought us out. And I tell you very honestly, I don't intend to sell out in a situation or put myself in any situation with a federation where I have to keep my mouth shut. Thank God one might be able to say a free person till today. It cost me some $200,000 a year to run Chabad House with the various programs that we have. And we just raise it from day to day, from people, from kids and from adults all over the world. I mean, say the world, I mean within the next 5 blocks of Chabad House, and try to keep the doors open. Very difficult. The Federation themselves, apparently, I once had a run, and we do a lot of counseling. So the Jewish Family Service has been sending some kids over. Fine, what does it bother me? A kid needs help. Fine, I don't care where he comes from. Comes in, help him try to do this, try to do that. One day there was a kid that was real nuts. Unbelievable. Even in Berkeley he would be regarded as being way up. And on top of that, he had numerous other problems. So he was there for 15 minutes, and I realized that even in Camarillo he would have to be under tight security. So I said, let me help you get into a hospital. I can't help you here. He got very upset, and he probably went down to the corner and calls up the Federation and says, what kind of a business is this? The guy told me I belong in a hospital. I'm more normal than the rabbi is. So they told him, Shai, you may be more normal than the rabbi. Take it easy, we'll call him back. And I'm sure that they think he's more normal than I am. So finally they call me back and they start screaming at me, what kind of business? That's the business you're in. Kids should be in your place always. How can you tell somebody to leave? I said, excuse me, first of all, I said, I don't have to explain to you how we work. And second, I said, have you ever supported us to any extent? So finally I get a call back from the head of the family service the next day, and the head of the family service says to me, Rabbi, you're doing great work. We've seen the work and we should support you. if only you could divorce the religion from what you're doing. You can only divorce the religion a little bit. It shouldn't carry the religious character. He didn't want to say take a shave or anything of the sort, but he said, or let your hair grow, one of the two. So if you can only divorce the religion, that's unfortunately where it's at today. So many people today don't realize. So many people today don't realize that it's religion itself that gives man his feeling in life and his modus operandi in life. I'd like to close by invitation to invite all of you, whenever you'd like, to come by and visit with us and to experience a Shabbos, a Friday night. The services start at sundown, and to experience and to come and talk and to get involved or to study in any of the various topics that we spoke about today or anything else. And just great being with you today, and come by and see us again.